Last but certainly not least, I saved my favorite part of the show, webinar, whatever you want to call it, because it's my favorite market, pitcher props. We've got pitcher props with my good friend Mid-Major Matt. We talk all things the pitcher prop spreadsheet, and I even have a strikeout prop little data board that I'm going to not only show everybody here, but I'm going to send it out in the newsletter. Hi, Matt.
Hello. Looking forward to it. Much like your previous guest, not thrilled that we have one game tonight, and not thrilled that for some people you have to go to Netflix to watch it, and you may not be able to.
Yeah, it's pretty annoying. But of course, we've got the two pitchers we hate the most on the mound tonight, and I don't mean just I don't hate Max Fried. From a pitcher prop perspective, they both suck. Logan Webb and Max Fried are always solid 5.5 K prop guys who are going to hit or lose by one. So, Matt, we said we didn't love anything tonight, but let's just talk overall pitcher props. Strikeout prop market has caught up to us a little bit when it comes to how sharp it's been in the last couple of years, but it's still profitable for us. Out of all the pitcher prop markets the last year or two, which one's your favorite?
So I'm beginning to become more of a fan of the outs one. I love the outs one because I feel like you can find some advantages. There are certain teams who will leave their guys out longer if they're struggling. There are also certain pitchers that you are allowed to leave out there. Like I'll go to, our good friend Jordan Lyles, right? Jordan Lyles. Yeah. He used to be a guy that wouldn't pitch very well, but would still go 5. And he would still go 5 in the third or whatever, even when he's not going well, because he knows that he needs to go some innings. You know, my favorite guy, Cal Quantrill, for the longest time, he was an outs over machine because he would just go out there and do his thing for 6 innings. And you would, hit your over on the 17.5. So I like the outs market. Of course, the strikeout market is a lot of fun. And I'm still kind of working on the earned runs allowed market. I think it's a market that people don't look at as much. And you could certainly exploit, especially when you have bad fielding teams, because there are certain teams that are not good fielders, which means unearned runs, which means you still win your bet, even if someone gives up 7 runs because only 2 of them were earned.
Well, you actually got a little iffy on those last year because of the earned run versus runs. You said at one point you decided to just go first 5s instead.
Yeah, it's interesting because these kind of markets allow you to just isolate one half of a matchup. When you look at the sides and the totals, you're involving both teams. You're saying, all right, I need both teams to score on totals. I need both teams to not score for unders, and you need a certain team to win. Well, for this one, I'm really isolating it to one player. I need pitcher X to go and throw 5 innings. I need pitcher X to go and throw under 4.5 strikeouts. And this is the thing that, the less you have to worry about, the better. You can sit there and rest when your pitcher is in the dugout. You can sit there and kind of just go and watch other things or just not have to worry about your wager. So, I think everybody looks at the sides and the totals, but the prop market is the place to go, especially since books can't get every single prop right. If you look at every single game, if you look at tonight, there's every hitter prop, there's every pitcher prop, there's first 3, first 5, first inning, first 7. There is a market that you can exploit. The books just don't think you have the time to look at all of them.
Well, that's definitely true. What would you say? I guess we could talk some strikeout props since we have 10 minutes to first pitch. I'm going to show, one sec. Okay, so this is the first document that I put together. Thank you, Claude, for the strikeout power rankings. We love our strikeout props. So in green, here's the top 10, the ones that strike out the fewest from last year. Bottom 10, the most strikeouts. Royals were the least, Blue Jays were the least, Padres third least. We said this. Anyone who ever faced the Blue Jays last year, it was an under. What other rules are you sticking by for the first few weeks of the MLB season?
Well, the first thing I'll say is I am going to be very light on my cards for the first week or so. It takes the longest to handicap the first week, or at least the first time through the rotation, because you have to look at the spring statistics. And in some cases, you have to look at the spring statistics and the WBC statistics. And then you have to look at their history in the spring. Is this somebody who usually just uses the spring to go through and work on some stuff, and then it doesn't matter what their statistics are? Or is there somebody who is, really trying to be good in the spring. So like you kind of have to see how these guys are doing. Like one of the props that I posted for my futures for the season was I took the over on, I took 110 strikeouts plus for Cade Horton. Cade Horton's had a tremendous spring so far. He's gotten a lot of strikeouts for the Cubs, and so I'm using that to kind of go off of that and take the prop that I took. So that's why the first week or two is the toughest, because the spring statistics matter. I mean, this is time that you have to pay attention. Plus, you have to look and see how long these guys have gone. You know, if a guy only goes 2 innings in his last start in the spring, well, then he's only going to go potentially 4 in his first start in the regular season. That's where you then also have to look for, what was the first start last year like for some of these guys? You know, were they easing into the season? Exactly. Were they easing into the season? Certain guys are going to be, you know, especially look, Tampa Bay, like they are notorious for easing their pitchers into the start of the season. So like it comes down to, you know, you have to do a lot of research the first week or two of the season. And then once we kind of get into a large portion of it, then it's a lot better because now you have more data points.
What I also thought was intriguing. Well, first off, everyone should always look at lefty-righty splits. That's what Matt and I really focus in on. And you'll see that there are certain ones between lefties and righties, which is why I ended up going with this little cheat sheet from last year, remember? But these were the biggest differentiators, Matt, last year between lefties and righties, with the Nationals having the biggest between lefties and righties. They struck out a ton against lefties. Royals struck out a lot more against lefties. The Mariners struck out a lot against lefties. The O's, Phillies. The Red Sox were in here most of the year, but they did tail off a little bit last year at the end. Are you going to be kind of living by this when we face lefties at the start of the year?
So I'm going to kind of look at some of the, I mean, obviously the lineups are going to be different for a lot of these teams. And so you kind of have to look at the new additions and see what they were, you know. I like FanGraphs. FanGraphs has projected lineups and has K percentage from last year. So you kind of get an idea as to where the problem spots are in these lineups and where you can kind of take advantage of it. So yeah, I'm going to look at last year's numbers, but you know, as we talked about, you know, the Nationals 2 years ago didn't strike out very much at all. And then last year they struck out a ton. So you look at last year's numbers, but you can't make it as like, you know, your guaranteed thing for the start of the season, because, you know, rookies are going to be in their second year and they're going to be hopefully be better against certain situations. So yeah, I'm going to look at last year's numbers, but I'm also going to look at the new lineups and see where the problem spots are potentially.
Question from Andrew. Do you have any thoughts on Max Fried tonight? He's only gone over 16.5 outs once in his last 5 season opening starts.
So most times I'm going to go unders on pretty much anything. Now, look, this is a case-by-case situation, but like there won't be many overs in my first week of this stuff because, you know, and you could speak to this. I feel like Aaron Boone is somewhat cautious. I feel like he's a guy that's going to want to go get 5 from Max as much as possible and then kind of move on. And he was a guy who loved using his bullpen last year, it felt like, good or bad. And so I could see a situation where Max
I
goes
was Max
5.
Fried unders or nothing today. Like, and I actually was looking at his strikeout prop. I thought it was, if you could get, and I was looking at PrizePicks tonight, I was able to get Max Fried. I haven't bet it yet because I'm like, do I want to fade Max Fried? I don't know. But under 5.5 Ks for Max Fried tonight, because it's a number he's like not gone. He hasn't gone over 5.5 in years on opening day, at least majority of the years. And then Logan Webb, if you could get him under 6.5, I would take that. But or you could go, sorry, it was over Logan Webb 4.5. Over 4.5 for Logan Webb and under 5.5 for Max Fried. That's what it was on PrizePicks. And $250 bet made you $550, which is like $200. It's very juiced pretty much on PrizePicks to do that. But that's the only way I would play it. Like alternate lines for these guys, because I think the numbers are pretty good. I just don't know with this new Yankees bullpen what Aaron Boone's going to do, because he really has no long guys right now.
Well, and Logan Webb also is a guy who had traditionally has been an outs over guy. Like you don't usually see anything under 17.5 for Logan Webb. Like he's a guy that you know pretty much is going to go 6. And so the books know this too. And so
yeah,
the thing you have to factor in,
he pitched so much in competitive ball in the WBC.
Right, exactly. And I think that's going to help him. And I think that the WBC is going to help with some of these starters. Now, look, some of these guys.
Curious though, we haven't spoken about this yet. The Giants have a new manager.
Yeah, and it's a college manager too. So who knows? Is he going to want to go out there in the first game and be like, I have to trust my guys and let them go out and pitch a little longer to earn their respect, or something like that? Or is he going to be a guy who's very cautious and is going to say, all right, I need to have 5 from him, and that's it, and then I'm going to go to the rest of my bullpen. So like, chances are when I do my card for tomorrow, and I haven't started too much yet, I have to finish because, as I said, it takes a long time to handicap this first week. You're going to see more unders than overs. And you're also not going to see as many things tomorrow as I would normally have. You might see 1 or 2 things as opposed to a normal, Thursday that I would have.
Are
like
we doing
5
a
or
YouTube
6
tomorrow?
We'll see. I guess that's something we're going to have to talk about because
it depends on what we like.
Exactly. We're going to have to see how much we like for tomorrow. I mean, we could certainly do some information, even if we don't like a lot of things. But yeah, we're going to try and do some mornings where we basically come up with our selections and then we tell you before the markets move, because this is, K-props are a market that's going to move. You've already seen it with some of this stuff that's out there because these books have put them up for, I would say, 24 hours almost, and they've moved. And there's a lot of things that we may have liked, but the juice is just not very good. And so we're going to pass.
Yeah. We'll see. This week's going to be interesting. It's funny. I was looking at my Pickett stuff and I saw on Pickett that I started way down last year, but climbed my way up. We had a great end of the season in K-props. Last question from Craig Abel. Who do you think will be the surprise players this year?
So I have I posted my futures on my Twitter account at MidMajorMatt for this coming season. I am a huge Chase DeLauter fan. I think the fact that he was able to get a little bit of time in the playoffs, not granted it was only 2 games, but I think that helped. He's had a tremendous spring. He's a contact guy. So I took his over on his batting average for the season and his 110 plus hits for the season. I guess sticking with Cleveland, I like Cade Smith as a closer. I took 30 plus saves for Cade Smith. Cleveland's one of these places, like, they don't have a backup closer. They don't have, they don't mess around with these other guys. Like, if he's available, he's going to get the save at the end. And I think Cleveland could have a decent year this year. So I really like Cade Smith as a closer. And then, of course, and this. Oh, actually, this is the other one I like. So on FanDuel, Zach Wheeler's number is 141.5 for strikeouts for the season. Well, Zach Wheeler's doing his first rehab start, I think, on Friday in AAA, and they're starting his clock for the 30 days. If Zach Wheeler comes back at the end of April, I think you're going to get a solid 28 to 30 starts. 141.5 strikeouts, to me, that's a very nice number. I think the books are still pricing him like a guy who's going to come back in May as opposed to a guy who's going to come back in April.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting, too, that Gerrit Cole is starting the season on the 15-day IL as opposed to the 60-day IL. So maybe that's a good sign. Mid-Major Matt, he's going to be talking on the newsletter throughout the season. We're going to do some March Madness this weekend as well. YouTube page, Prop Queen Media. We're going to do some K-props there for free, so you guys can check that out. Anything else except follow you at Mid-Major Matt?
Yeah, follow me at MidMajor Matt. And I guess Paul's asking about Scooble's number. It's 7.5 against the Padres. So that's a tough one because much like, and you can talk about this, much like the stars in the NBA, it feels like their PRA is usually a lot higher than it should be because everybody assumes the stars always go over. You're going to see inflated numbers for the Scoobles, the Coles, and all these guys because they're good strikeout pitchers. On the one hand, the Padres usually are a good contact team, but on the other hand, Scooble did get a little taste of real baseball at the World Baseball Classic. So he might go 5-6 innings in this one. The last thing I'll say is this, especially for the first week or two, make sure to read the manager quotes. The managers will indirectly say how much they're going to go with their starting pitchers. I never understood why we had press conferences before baseball games, but for us, it means something, especially early on. They may say, all right, well, Christopher Sanchez is only going to go 5 innings. All right, Andrew Painter is only going to go 4 1/3 innings. Make sure to take that information and run with it to the sports books before the sports books makes the adjustment because they don't think that you're actually paying attention to that sort of things.
I know you kind of answered this, but just real quick, Ray Williams says, what data sites do you use?
So I use our K-prop spreadsheet. I mean, that's number one when it comes to this sort of thing. I use FanGraphs, at least early on, I'm going to use FanGraphs to kind of visualize the lineups and see where the strikeout issues are. I go to ESPN. Everybody who follows me knows that at 10 a.m. almost every day, I post notable hitters versus pitchers, the good, the bad, the ugly, and stuff like that. So that way you can kind of target some things for DFS. So I go to ESPN for batter versus pitcher stuff. But those are kind of the main things. I mean, For those of you who subscribe, when you actually get to look at the K-Prop spreadsheet, it's got everything that you need. And the thing that I think we've both learned is that visually seeing these things helps so much, because you notice that teams go on over stretches, teams go on under stretches, and you would never notice that unless you wrote this all down. Teams will go 10 of 12 unders and then 10 of 12 overs, and it's like a contagious thing. Finally, we also break down the core stuff. How is it in cores versus out of cores? There's some very interesting numbers with regards to how the overs and unders are for K-props in cores.
Mid-Major Matt, you are the best. Can't wait to do everything baseball pitcher props with you throughout the rest of the season. We've got to go because Netflix is starting. We've got to get Yankees, Giants. Opening day, opening night. We wish that it was opening day, but it's fine. Mid-Major Matt, all of the contributors actually, Matt, Tom, Gerrit, going to be participating in the Splash Sports Hit Survivor contest. So I just showed it before. I will show it again. Share the screen. So if you guys want in, you guys could, nope, that's not it. This is where you guys can join the MLB Hit Survivor, where it's a $20 entry and you can make $20K. Just use promo code PropQueen to sign up and you will be able to enter. And you get $20 in quick picks. So if you want $20 in quick picks, then use promo code PropQueen. Join the Hit Streak Survivor. See if you can survive past all of us. And just a little inside scoop, and Matt knows this. If we fill this lineup, so share it with your friends, because if we fill this and maybe even one more contest, then we will get a pitcher survivor contest, a strikeout survivor contest. That's what Splash Sports says they're going to work on for me if we continue to fill these hit streak survivors. So this way, and I will, as we start to get closer to that mark, I will explain that. But we will have a pitcher survivor contest at some point in the near future, which will be like our bread and butter. But for everybody else, Mid-Major Matt, thanks as always for joining.
No problem. Happy opening day.
Happy opening day. For all of you, thank you all for joining. Again, if you did miss anything from this webinar, I am going to be sending the entire webinar out in a newsletter article. So if you guys subscribed to my Prop Queen newsletter over at thepropqueen.com,